it's great. We have like some speech.
Nice. That's always fun.
Yeah. Uh,
All right. Hello, everyone. Hi. Hey, everyone's like, I know it's a little cold. It's kind of a bummer. We're so spoiled here. Just want to thank you once again for supporting us here at the Poetry Center, and just thankful for the best way that I see you all supporting is just by showing up to the readings, by watching our readings on YouTube, by subscribing to our channel, by coming and visiting our classes and workshops. So thank you so much for doing that. Happy spring 2023. Woo! We made it. We made it. I'm Diana Delgado, and I'm the literary director here at the Poetry Center. And I curate the reading and lecture series and also the classes and workshops and a whole bunch of other things with the team here at the Poetry Center. Tonight is a very special night because we are here to celebrate one of my favorite poets ever, Roberto Tejada. Let's give a hand for Roberto. He's a poet that I have followed not only for his words, but for his words about words, and for his words that are at last resolved. Please know that at the end of the reading, we will be selling books, and we will also be just sort of talking a little bit about the upcoming spring season. Unfortunately, I do want to share that Susan Briante, who was ready and who is a great friend and a great poet, was going to be introducing Roberto, could not make it. So what I thought I would do is just share a little bit of the back cover of Why the Assembly Disbanded, which is Roberto's newest book, because I think they did an excellent job in describing his work in a way that I potentially would never be able to do in 10 minutes. Immersive, postmodern, and philosophical. Why the Assembly Disbanded provides us an associative, critical Latinx aesthetic connecting the Mexico-United States borderlands to Latin America's neo-Baroque heritage. Migrants, settlers, tourists, and exiles moving across various hemispheric landscapes are featured in these exuberant, capacious, and self-reflexive poems. Tejada relates the ravages of white supremacy in our culture that, together with immigrant precarity, turn home into a place of foreboding and impending eviction, even as a dream weather makes room at last for scenes of possibility and attainment in the account of human history. The sweeping futuristic vistas open onto narratives of colonial extraction, human displacement, abuses of capitalism, mass media spectacle, the antagonism of language and technical images and the sensorium of urban and digital life, worlds, and the relations of desire encouraged by pictures and words in the economy of attention. With language given to pageantry, tonal precision, and a hopeful lyric radiance that can accommodate ecstasy and justice, Roberto Tejada's carnivalesque borderland imagery pushes the boundaries of Latinx literature, world building by way of reverie, speculation, and retro-futurist tableau, and with vivid, sometimes violent particularity. His poems enact hallucinatory realities of the hemisphere, an imagination that triangulates history, lyricism, and art as social practice. Please help me welcome Roberto Tejada.
Get this together. Thank you, Diana. Thank you to all the leadership of the Poetry Center and the staff, Tyler, Sarah, and Paula, who've made my visit here so fruitful, and to the participants in the class yesterday at the Poetry Center, thank you as well. It was really a special afternoon for me. I will be reading from Why the Assembly Disbanded this evening, and then I'll be reading from a new manuscript, a new book that I will be probably completing by the end of the spring. And I'm glad that Diana mentioned I think that the true drive of the book is about this kind of world building and the both actual and surreal border zones between Mexico and the United States and Latin America. And it begins maybe with the little terrors of everyday life and concludes perhaps in the cosmos. One of the things you may not be able to see right now is that the book contains a gallery of photographs by the photographers Connie Samaras and by the photographer Ruben Ortiz Torres, and also a small gallery of photographs that I selected and assembled from archives like the NASA archive, the LA Public Library, the Library of Congress, in an attempt to create kind of the world building around this that takes us from the atrocities of daily life into perhaps the possibility for ecstasy and justice, as Diana mentioned. Two guardians. My words were sent underground to where the toggle switch detonates. That was the glare our voices were avoiding. There was something also broken about the obedience of this retainer. The arcades weren't semaphores just because the arrows leading there facilitated those of us in line as though reliant on east or west quadrants. The ticket master was prone to elide requests from the travelers. The sliding doors sounded a fanfare for the common man. Get faster as thought, or mind the gaps. What I can infer, never altogether will establish a space adequate to the body count. The platform motivates two guardians who were instructed in safekeeping to usher me from harm's way, but my standpoint so recedes from this tableau as to acknowledge a footprint perspective. Translucent envelope inside, remaindered by the riptide, or such tunnel vision as to warrant arrest. Why I was sent to the netherworld inflicted with no wound. Someone lets fall a pair of Ziplocs containing the crystal bliss of this conspiracy. What I had to say was sent, I mentioned this, I think already, underground switch and toggle intended to ignite what I never could bring myself to mean. Where the voices were avoiding me, hands outstretched at quarter day to hold back the beam. Was there something broken? I weather compliant. I rally. American household. Here, I'm untethered, or else this American household is. A shame for guest and resident alike, torn asunder, immovable, unmoving, horizon line before it closes on the embankment, which is too a slowing thunder. Whether cash and cake were meant for us, the undeserving, is a frenzy of thought, an amusement from the spoils of corporation able to outweigh the will unnerving all restraint, from the madness or immodesty that coils each milligram back into the sky blue addiction, McKesson, Cardinal Health, and Amerisource Bergen manufactured for the painless end-to-end encryption's other plum, for which we are to wait again, our turn in line, and still the others keep cutting ahead of us here, the complected and other-tongued asylum-seeking assembly of the glad in ordinary deliverance from fear. First fuel in the plot that turns us into tyrants unspeaking, yet another dream to make them do what in wakeful hour is lawless for us depraved and still deprived of power. So some of these establish this kind of hallucinatory space that it seems to me reflective of the moment in which I was writing these, and this is more or less completed around the year 2016. Or why the assembly disbanded as before. Hosanna in the borderline cinder block warehouse. As much applause as possible to collapse inside an ambulance now that conveys the intravenous bags and bottle holder. 27 stones from here to the Idlewild, to the gun fields. It's a place you find automation. It's a place you find automaton nurses who labor in gray-green subterfuge in all-over stripes. A round of punches to the lower jaw for my part in the main. So I get it now. I'm the chosen one for reassignment, face so altered as to beguile. This is enemy convenient, a purview suitable to very new cosmetic methods. Question is, admin diazepam and other Question is, the admin diazepam and other hypodermics, were they counteractive or now consistent with enough cases as to compel canvassers to anticipate first signs of panic, sleepwalker antecedents, the tables in upright position, crushed ice out of open air, conditioned ward redolent of superstores and tattoo shops, or was it morphine sulfate and protocols applied to disable the congenital twins? Here's the world news. To junk science prizes, wax candy lips intone a flawless, if always accented sentence. The kind of talking from another world where my mother was Marlo Thomas and there were rival techniques contributed to the celebrity of my seven-sided disappearance. Or was that all my enuresis when I doubled in size as from her pocketbook, adorable but already diminishing? This is entitled Baraka Inscape, and it is based around a phrase of the great poet Amiri Baraka. And in part, a lot of this work came out of my interest in assemblage art, and the title, Why the Assembly Disbanded, comes from an essay I wrote for the excellent exhibition that was curated by Kelly Jones called Now Dig This, Black Art, Los Angeles, 1960 to 1980. And so some of the work here is based on a kind of an assemblage technique as well. Baraka Inscape. Not so for my republic, nothing left of rule. Nothing left of rule over the salvage self by way of weapon to sing in sovereign song. No more composed, encouraged than most. No more than most myself, save nothing is benefiting the field with as many futile stockpiles of opinion, so moved to moving with derision or memories, abortive little heap after what I did to injury. Room still cold with the stroke of it. Still wreckage, a resource like flesh, imputing fingers or lips I made stiller, unavailing even to eager asymmetries of white, where I am when I refute in the little kill zone altered of melodic lines, white in August heaps, disintegrated glass, volcanic at the skeleton edge of that pernicious, unfiltered little emphatic for Baraka's dusk, for Duncan's throat, for an advent in mind, for the kinfolk meant by all in the derogative mob in landlocked earth, in antipodes, in eye-wide non-combatant number, in clay and kin, in day and bone, in name and eruption of a counterform in the closed field of white definition. I think I'll now move, and then I'll come back to read a final poem from that collection to work that I've been writing over the last couple of years that's more or less centered in West Texas or the Rio Grande Valley, which is sort of the space of composition, but also the space of the imagination. It's entitled Carbonate of Copper, and the title comes from that marvelous little book by the art historian Michael Baxendall on 15th century Italian painting, in which he talks about the difference between carbonate of copper, which was a lesser blue than aquamarine for painters at the time. And I like this idea of the materiality of carbonate of copper. And I'm also thinking of the poet Alan Grossman and his idea of the beloved companion. And in a sense, the book was begun during the COVID pandemic. But one can think of the beloved companion as this kind of widening circle, as Grossman points out, of family, of affiliative kin, of neighbors, of the known and unknown, the human and the non-human. And for him, the poem is a kind of unforgetting, and this is to me the drive behind some of the work. And I've been influenced, as well as the participants in the class yesterday know, by the work of Pauline Oliveras and the idea of listening to listening as a kind of full embodied practice that turns one into that other person that evaporates. And also to Jane Bennett's idea about vibrant matter, when she says that that which is non-human or material also has a kind of agency, that it's active and has an earthy, not quite human capaciousness. It's that impersonal life that surrounds us and infuses us that has that kind of painful, nagging feeling that something is being forgotten or left out. Carbonate of copper. In the hours I was left to the elements, sorely colorless labor, evolving facts of a day, days now deficient in matters of fact, so many attachments of the tribe to this stupefying circle, it burns a new image of the earth, disabling the view from nowhere. Am I unsheltered and so out of time as to wonder, does my face defy its aim on end? Am I the architect of this very small thing I derive or refuse from 7 descendants? Does a landscape here obtain as when there was food, the field, abundant sun, summer green, river valley, chestnut, little balm, border, milestone? Came the builders, of a sudden identical twins at the sugar mill. It was a window overlooking the carbonate of copper on shapes predictive in the wireless ether. There are always references to photography, and this is entitled Grayscale. Beam of light, an empty room, no, not empty, cloud, cone, circle, suddenly a set, and somebody suspended there asleep, animating with alarm the household objects, its flush focus, point being my right ventricle, severed whirlpool, and my motor cortex uniting at a higher pitch, the nearly inaudible hiss with a baseline clicking of burning surrendered self. Outside, there's wind in the palm trees, a far-off siren turning on atoms, a 5 o'clock branch dragging the asphalt, also a single leaf, concise in sidewalk tumble. If you were prone to forgetting a detail or direction, here are the scenes before sunup, a sound source, television, grayscale, gunfire, in strains from a time I recognize, but not as mine, the bark of men in chains, reaction, bark and spit and menace in speech. I was barely awake. I was barely even a boy, my mother preparing for work. Already I knew the warfare it was for her to inhabit the volume and idiom of skin out of true or incompliant. Prior to this scene, where she returns in half light despite the prohibitions a morning contains in sentences that fail even the swelling oriented to the audible horizon. Redacted, herein waiting for the whereabouts of father in lifelong debility of earth, in the coercion of a child given to search for it, for anything. Season. Season passing from the one encounter I dodge, I take cover again, but rarely succeed in reaching anywhere new in the landscape. Maybe if I bury the coins for those who live among us, unattainable, in the subdivision between citrus and palm, in the lot behind the emergency center care. Officials report a moving situation. Very quickly, I adapt to protect the citizens. More precise as I influx when it falls on the government to help, says the bishop. On the chief of state, says the county judge. On the unvaccinated, says the medical examiner. They who seek asylum, do they carry diseases absent here? Do they fill our hospitals with need for treatment? Is the answer in our rage room. We've accommodated a selection of music for the blood flow. Here are the clubs and sledgehammers for you to break things. Every corner of this house for us to break things. The visitation here is from my deceased parents. Night Festival. To reach the night festivities, I press against the celebrants, an abbreviated symmetry with me at the lower end of the hill. In a synthesis, a corporation, an exile of bodies and dangers I fear, who know I have no business on this premises. Or I fail to comprehend the intimation of despair, or I belong to no undercurrent of the circumstance, or what I draw instead, now the universal grid, now a pixelated vista, configures no permission, even as the mob begins to dissipate, and there is my father, with his remorse imposing as the Andes above the great mountain savanna, his innermost ensemble of cells, my father, his subordinate and metallurgic heartache, all the microtones of Bogota, 17th locality of my father's amphibian electrocardio dissection, alien puppetry, his Gaspard de la Nuit, late lesson of his road mirage science. He says, I'm homesick for the material contradiction of our kin. Among the living, long after the land overcame my conformity, but please spare this from your mother, from her propensity to disappear over time, her 4 cardinal points in rapid alteration, her lofty decibels and coffee milk austerity, saltine, her solitude in newsprint apocalypse or index cards, her Billy the Kid, Salon Mexico, Wilshire Ebel, Pedro Armendáriz, Yucatan Peninsula, reclusive close-up, ¿Qué hora es? My father says, apuntalas, the words ignominy and escrow, too late, or unspecified on the subject of wake, time, surrender, phosphorescent in the dimming light of extrasensory encircled, body before, body after. I had for my heart a perfect measure to justify the untimely turn of my neither known, never noiseless, and I had for my heart in the age of consent a little loathing. I had a coin that fit the slot. I had my compound fracture declension of pain and deflated lung irregularities of color. But I know now the mistakes of my ancestry in the style of my birthday venipuncture and poultice for my chest infection in the slide transparencies of my naked limbs and chicken pox that foretold the phlebotomy of all Erie County. I had now in my ventricles the great nebula of forgetting and the abrogated law no longer larger than life. Lung compliance in quarantine. If in my tangent I turned contagious, some one of 11 exceptions, nominal as I am when lost, now in the wave glide, in my rattled distraction, maybe the atmosphere held in the hold, a feeling of elastic measure, I was pliant in the cellophane green grass corridor of sleep and departure proximate, but something conspired so that my destination was to the syndicate unseen as footsteps turned my knees now, obliged to repel the pavement, sand, sound of sand in the multiples of 3, accent of a heartbeat. Point I was given to demonstrate, unable, only known in my foreign burning movement of muscle and bone. Suddenly obvious, a steeple, a forest, prohibition, a star point. But so too in the great monument this vowel and sovereign name, name of estuary, name of hillside, name of battle cry, scene of the discarded, begone, beheld before I was born. time to wake Michael. Long view, short breath, wrong sign tethered, unwinding into place, distended edge frayed. I am the clinic of this radius with my mouth and cheek, uncertain cell, my genome, survivals of blood, buried stop motion, coupling at the outskirts that fasten unfitting for our neighbors what they do there. Maybe time for arms and axes, time for spouses, so given to lip and uplift, given to spine and finger, throat and hip, to clavicle. In everything I rough, tumble, venerate in you, this custody makes possible a past, the solitary plenitude of twin time home in slow descent, the company we keep. And I will end with a poem back from Why the Assembly Disbanded. Which truly indulges in the paranoid fantasies of the speaker here. Kill time objective. For the sake of my acoustic self, I lead out of danger an anonymous pack from the building entrampment, secured by militia. First prompted was the mouth emission, other species techniques I thought would never keep me from the village emulation, even now a third person plural, to ask in a chorus concerned with all the unsanctioned disclosures. We had expressed in such adversaries our interest. We had divined from them a quantum of intelligence. Soon adjusted of my amplitude, I escape and striving escalate the only barrier dividing inside from out, thick steel at first translucent, gleaming now but with a weathered crackle glaze, suspending the ability to recognize a likeness, and I panic, overjoyed or appalled. Anyway, the bass line exhausting the tonal pitch, insofar as they see not my face, no matter how close they look, first and foremost classified, chief management mostly disapproving. Soon, the phonic constellation after hours of the data harvest, room tone, proximity to source, boredom of the solar system, estuary trespass, soon as maps were to the mirror sequence by leaning on the present, complicity was to the frenzy of flesh, muddle of tongues, a ransom note, but for the sake of fighting for breath, already the instrument for transposition in a parasitic image finally proper of this place. I'm the encryption, I'm the statistic, no longer bristling in the heroics of metaphor. I'm equipped with artillery that enables me now to bullet an opening for everyone's deliverance. But for the scene change, lodgings very disinfected, new cause for residing, and that I trace it back to the assignment room and retrieve, because arson, what I misplaced anew and under observation now, two performers licentious but so approving of the spinal cord perspective as to marvel at the sheer outrage and wonder of this surgical incision. But for the tangled purpose of the anatomy, we take to name eviscerate. But for the conference hour this week with my parishioners, in exchange for the motion in multiple layers, overcoat, many trousers, uniform, in the process also of my ballooning self into the unprecedented scales of subjection. As soon as I recite the lines that tell the world of the authority to petrify, to touch and be tutored or otherwise curbed, but never entirely embraced, no matter the many hours we waited on Ledgewood to trust the day. But for the amassing body attributes of my contempt and retribution, but for the ever more audacious interference at the level of my molecular resemblance, but for the album. Now, children, please open to lesson 32. Thank you.
That was amazing. Can we give another round of applause to Roberto Tejada for his published work, his new work, and his future work? Okay? Because that new work was fantastic. And that, alongside all of your other work, is just, it's mind-blowing. So thank you for helping us open our spring 2023 season. A few things. Roberto will be signing books right over here. The books are for sale right over there from the UA bookstore. We have our friends over there helping us sell books. And just a quick reminder, we have an upcoming workshop with Tayimba Jess that still has a few spots. And our next reading will not be here at the Poetry Center, but it will be at MoCA in Tucson on Saturday, January 28th, at 12 p.m., and that reading will be featuring Cecilia Vacuna, Daniel Berzutsky, and Rosa Alcala. Okay, so we will see you there, and thank you again. Have a great night.